Thank you all for coming. This is a fun thing to do on a wonderful Saturday afternoon. No snow, which I'm not happy about, but a lot of people are, I know. So our feature reader today, and you all know him, I believe, is David Moreau. So he's going to start the reading off, and then we're going to do an open mic. If you want to read and have not put your name in the basket that Jay brought, do so before we do the open mic, please. And just a few information. The bathroom's down the corridor through this door. The key is on the water fountain. Don't leave it in the bathroom because it'll be locked forever and ever, amen. This open mic is going to happen the second Saturday of every month from now until April. So yes, yeah. Yes, exactly.
I think May now actually too.
Well, I don't know yet, but we'll see. So, Calla is the librarian. I think the adult librarian, yes. Right? Yes. Okay. For the library, and Calla is the one that sets us up for to do the poetry and everything else. So thank you, Calla, very, very much. Yes. So a little bit about David. I've known David for a long time. We all know him as a really, really good poet and a fun poet, very dynamic, in his reading. And we've asked him to just start first. I think he wants to do a little bit of baseball poems, what Jay told me. Is that right? You're going to talk a little bit about baseball? Yeah. But it's a holiday open, so we're kind of keeping it around, that holiday festivity, and baseball can certainly be a part of that. So here we are. David Moreau. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claire Hersom, and thank you, Jay. I really appreciate you guys being organized and doing this remarkable thing, and thank you, Calla, for being here, and thank you guys for listening. And I am just so grateful to be part of this group, and I look forward to hearing everybody. So with that, I'm going to start with the dedication. And a lot of you guys have heard I've got this poem for Ted Bookey, and I've been working on the title, and it's now part of a category of poems, those poems where the title is actually longer than the poem. So the title is now called, After Spending Most of Your Life Claiming You Don't Believe in God, Is it too much to ask for an afterlife? For Ted Bookey. One day I see the brown leaf clinging to the beech tree, encouraged by the wind, leap off its branch and do somersaults in the air. I wish for you such delight wherever you are. And my Christmas poem is one of those family poems that, one of the family stories that we've had all our lives, and now that people are, getting old and things are changing, and now I'm realizing just how valuable, I'm one of the few people that remember this. Flying. We leave the farm in North Berwick mid-morning, packed into a Plymouth station wagon with a slant six engine. My father at the wheel, as confident as Jack Kennedy after starting in the barn before dawn. My mother across from him after cooking and cleaning and screaming, packing bologna sandwiches and potato chips, caring for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children and Teresa, born with a broken hip. Dorothy, still alive, was the baby held in my mother's arms. Across New Hampshire and into Vermont, it begins snowing. Up and down the mountains, it snows and snows and snows. Bickering in the back seat, jostling and whining, oblivious to the miracle of a car being driven in a storm. I wake in the dark. We've come down out of the mountains and dropped at the crest of the road and stopped at the crest of the road to Pepe's farm in Bridport. The headlights are seeking road and finding only white. There's no way to get there. The sky has fallen and buried the earth, and my father guns the engine, and we fly. Straining forward, shoulder to shoulder, snow machine gunning the windshield, my father working the wheel back and forth, left and right into the skid, the metal sled grinding and leaping past a silo, a barn, a farmhouse, a field, swirling in white. We come to a stop, buried in the gully below Pepe's farm, and he and Uncle Ronnie bring the tractors down and gather us in their laps and bring us to Meme's kitchen to raw milk and chocolate mayonnaise cake. In the morning, hey, Chris, it's cold. The men gather round the car planted in the front yard, exclaiming, bien fait, and clapping my father. When the hood is lifted and snow is packed solid around the engine block, I hear the arguments at the table. Uncle Verist pounding his fist, insisting it's a better life in the mills. Meme's anger spattering like cold water on a hot frying pan. Everything for the barn and nothing for the house. What did I know of what it takes to stretch the milk check, build the herd, buy feed or grow the feed, pay the banknote, support a wife? My father on the road selling dairy equipment, my mother at home crying how eager I was to get out of that house at the age of 20. Yet how could I be ashamed of such a family when we once flew so perfectly? And I remember in Ted and Ruth's group years ago, I think it was, do you remember Eva? She was a very intelligent woman who was a very tough critic, and I remember her once saying, "Why is that even a poem?" So, anyway, I'm going to read you what I've been writing lately. In the pandemic, I found I couldn't write anything about sorrow or the world being pushed back on its heels or anything like that, like what was actually happening. So I had to, imagine something that wasn't happening. So I started writing a baseball book, and it's called When the Universe Waited for Me, and it refers to the moment when the catcher squats and the umpire hunches and the dangerous batter coils and the second baseman toes dirt, and the kid selling soda in the grandstand rests his tray on the shoulder, and they all look at the pitcher who holds the ball. And for Joseph, prudent parent, me, that was the moment that mattered. So this is his first-person memoir, first-person narrative, and it's I'm going to read you two sections, totally disparate, but this is when he was a 17-year-old kid. He was still delivering newspapers because he pledged that he was going to keep his paper route until he graduated from high school, but he's already been a successful professional pitcher. And it's called The World's a Wasp Nest Stirred. I read the front page of the Sand Hill Telegraph while I wait for the distribution manager to count me 112 newspapers. Mr. Quick likes to count his newspapers, and he likes to make the paper boys wait. I'm first in line. One time I channeled Lucy Lassard, and I told the other boys, I go first, I'm the oldest. No one questioned me. Il est le bon lancier, one boy says. No kidding, another mutters. Bon lancier is good pitcher, and well, it's simple translation. I read about the lynchings, race riots, and strikes. White people against colored people, Catholics against Protestant, the French against the Irish, Union against Free Shop, Sprague Electric against Fitchburg Coal. Baseball is not life or death. But when I'm racing to first, desperate to get my arm into position to take Kurtzlaw's throw and my foot on the bag before the runner who's chugging down the line, lucidly aware if he gets there first that his team scores a run, and if I beat him, it's the third out. 1,200 people screaming their guts at me. It feels important. Indeed, it does. Sometime between 5:45 a.m. when he's supposed to and 6 a.m., which is more likely, Mr. Quick pulls up the overhead door and starts counting out bundles. I've never not been there, ready and waiting. So, 13 years later, 1934, he's 32 years old, 15 years later. He's pitched 7 years, this is his 7th year in the major leagues, and the Boston Braves have traded him to the New York Yankees. So it's July 25th, which is it's like a Christmas allegory, only the opposite side. It's instead of the darkest day of the year, it's the lightest day of the year. And this is called I Need the Company. I'm on a red ball all the way from Boston to Washington. And that's the train it's the express train. They had a red ball and all the other trains had to get out of the way. So that was a good deal. Which is good because the Yankees do not spring for a sleeping car, and I sit upright all the way. By the time I get a cabbie to bring me to the hotel, it's after 1 a.m. and the Yankees are sleeping. The traveling secretary appears in his bathrobe, nonplussed. He pores over the room assignments and laughs. Room 212, amigo. You'll probably be alone. When I look quizzical, he explains, we gave up doing room checks on Babe Ruth a long time ago. Apparently, we traded the other guy for you. Well, sweet Yankee dreams, Joe Parent. Coming into the room, I switch on the electric overhead, and Babe Ruth sits up, blinking and snarling. Who the fuck are you? Joe Parent, I hold out my hand. Ruth covers his head with a pillow. Go away. I just got in from Boston. Go back to Boston. I need a bed. I'm pitching today. Go away. I'm tired and say something nasty to the best player in baseball, who springs from his bed like a cougar on an antelope and grabs me by the shoulder. I brace for a fight. Aw, shucks, fella, what am I doing? Welcome to the Yankees. My head wobbles as he embraces me. I would have baked you cake, but I was sleeping. He belches and scratches and heads off to the bathroom across the hall where you can hear him farting, hawking, gargling, and cursing. The pipes groan. I settle my head onto the pillow when the babe flings on the light. Aw, shucks, fella, we're going out. He yanks back the bed sheets and pulls my arm. I need the company. The fragrance of pepper. I barely have time to put on my trousers before we're out in the sticky air. I expect we'll walk east to Constitution Avenue where there'll be a bar open. I don't want a drink and I don't want an expensive woman sitting on my lap, and I'm worried where the babe is taking me. Instead, we head south toward the mall, past wood frame houses just like you'd see in Sand Hill. The neighborhood smell of basil and oregano. Pole beans are strung up to the porches, and tomatoes and eggplants are squeezed in tight everywhere. It's amazing to see all that growing in the city. I resolve to tell my brother Bobby, you don't need all those acres. Looky there, the babe says, noticing the gardens. I was hungry. I was always hungry. I was bigger than the other boys. I couldn't get by on the food they gave me. Miss Violet, she used to cut a big tomato and put it on bread. She put mayonnaise on the bread. You ever see mayonnaise made? She'd whip the eggs right there in front of you. The babe does not taper his voice for the people sleeping in the night, but because of the heat of the day, the heat I will be pitching in tomorrow, there aren't many people sleeping in Washington. They're all smoking cigarettes and talking in the dark. So you're from Boston? I love that town. I was a pitcher when I was in Boston. We see the first shelter, strung together with boards and canvas, and then we turn the corner, and as far as you can see is Tent City. I'm shocked, right there in front of me, what you read about in the papers. I only read the sports pages. That's what the ball players all say. I've seen the tents from the trains going by at 60 miles an hour. I want to go wake up the rest of the Yankees and tell them these people are here. The babe does not blink, but slips into an alley. I scoot to follow him. There's a girl as lovely as Snow White playing a violin. Children running through the alleys. A circle of people reading a Bible around a campfire. The Yankees ain't gonna offer me a contract. Colonel Rupert's gotta be fair to the other boys. He can't be paying Babe Ruth too much money. There's a smell coming from a big gray tent. Maybe 100 people are waiting outside. The smell is wonderful. The babe moves through the crowd like a tugboat. The sea parts. I follow in his wake. I hear, is that? No, it couldn't be. Yes, it is. The babe. He steps over. The babe steps over a rope into an area where they're washing, and then over another rope where they're chopping vegetables, and threads through where there's a woman as large as a black bear stirring a pot. The babe flies to her like a toddler. She rears up, makes him wait until she passes on her ladle. Then her voice crosses a valley. George Herman. They hug, a great hug, a great bear hug. Their bodies bent to each other, sobbing and sobbing. The babe's tears puddle on Miss Violet's apron. A small coffee-colored woman with a round face sits me at the end of a long plank table and sets a bowl in front of me, and a spoon and a piece of bread, beans, broth, meat, vegetables. When I lift my head, I see other men and women, 12 on a side, absorbed in their eating. I'm given a second bowl, and all that exists is the fragrance of pepper. And I'll finish. I try not to look at the babe and Miss Violet together while I'm eating. It's too personal. They remind me of a newsreel I saw once of two elephants, their trunks entwined. A music comes out of her. Hoped you'd come by, hoped you'd come by, hoped you'd come by. George Herman is a boy in her arms, whimpering. The babe can't pull the wagon no more, Miss Violet. I'm tired. All that money was so easy to spend, but Colonel Rupert never paid me more than I put on his big shiny desk. The soup line is moving. All around the babe and Miss Violet, a crowd gathers like water filling a pool. So many people with their hats in their hands. I think I'm hallucinating. When the babe and Miss Violet finally break apart, he takes my seat and I help the girls scurrying around collecting the empty bowls. The babe devours stew and great chunks of bread while the crowd grows deeper. When he's done eating, someone gives a signal and the whole park starts singing, "Take me out to the ball game." The babe beams. He whispers to me to to give me all the money I've got in his wallet, and he directs me to a kennel by the entrance. $37. The babe has to motion for me to drop it in. I don't like giving all that cash. 1,000 people walk us back to the hotel, serenading. The babe is in heaven, shaking hands, rubbing shoulders, swinging babies, hugging the ladies. He booms, "Casey would waltz with a strawberry blonde," and the band played on. The cops catch on, and show up a block from the hotel. But the babe diffuses everything, greeting the cops like long-lost friends, thanking them for their service. He's standing in the doorway signing autographs when I sneak back to room 212. I hear nothing until the 8:45 late call. That afternoon, I pitch 7 1/3 innings in miserable heat and leave with the 4-1 lead. Joe McCarthy grumbles, "You done good, considering." I'm 32 years old, and I've just won my first game in a Yankee uniform. And that felt like enough for you guys, right? Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so we have 13 readers, and that's a healthy group. So it is, what time is it? 3:30 maybe. So I think what we could do is read one or two. If you have one poem that's 3 pages long, that's one poem. Do you know what I mean? And if you have shorter poems, read more than that if you want, like 3, but we'll max out at 3. Does that sound all right? 2. If you have like haikus, you can do 3. Or something similar.
Haiku is different.
Yeah. So we'll just start. We'll draw the name out of the basket and go with it. Brian, a debut.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. I don't write a lot of poetry. I wrote some back in college a long time ago and dabble in it every now and then. I wrote this Thanksgiving morning. I woke up. I've been doing a lot of hiking in New Hampshire and with Jay. Jay and I do a lot of hiking in the White Mountains.
Could you pull the microphone closer to you?
Okay, yeah. So I've been doing a lot of hiking in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and recently there was a tragedy there. Somebody died on Mount Lafayette. And I just wrote this, I guess, more of a reminder of myself of the power and the indifference of the mountains. And this is called The Mountains. They are lions. Lions. Do not mistake them. There are days they may sleep, peaceful, dreaming in the summer sun. You will marvel at their beauty as you slip past. They are aware, but do not care. You may pass, but there are days they will roar and rage. There will be no peaceful summer dreams, and you will bewilder at the fury. You will not pass. They care not for you, your hopes and dreams, those you love, those that love you. They are lions. They are lions.
I don't read very often, so bear with me. Thanks for asking me to come, Claire. I don't have any festive poems, but I do have a lot of poems with rain in it. So I picked out a couple of those. I guess that's a little bit more conducive to what the weather's been like this year in Maine, for us anyway. Although the first one I'm going to read is not about rain. It's very, very short. It's called Galaxy Dance. She comes in late with a dress sparkling of navy blue and purple. A single look is all it takes. She'll make you feel small, really small. Yet she does so without intent, for she neither loves nor hates, and she's beautiful just the same. And if you guys didn't figure that out, that's about the Milky Way galaxy coming out at night. Probably not supposed to explain that, but just in case. You're welcome. I have a bunch to choose from here, so here's one about rain that I wrote about my son who had his first heartbreak, and it was really quite sad to watch. So it's called Young Love on a Foggy Night. The night is wet and fog settles across the grass. It spreads in milky halos before us. Wipers yield no fight against the mass. It keeps spreading until the landscape is hidden and only mist remains. Beautiful, mysterious, illuminated by the distant haze of moonlight. Much like young love, don't you think? Blinding, powerful, exciting, dangerous, hypnotizing. You cannot tell the road from the ditch. One wrong move and all could be lost forever. The first heartache is the worst because it takes you by surprise. Oh, the fragile heart of the youth. The excitement becomes despair, and nothing can be done. The mist is what it is. All we can do is keep driving, keep moving on. The night will clear by morning, and the fog will fade. The fog will fade away, but the pain will always remain. That's how heartbreak works. Once love has been written, it can never be unwritten, it can only be changed. Silly that I thought a car and a pair of wipers was enough to protect you. And the time the pain will diminish, it will become another type of distant haze. It will settle into another foggy night, beautiful, exciting, mysterious, even more blinding than before. And when it does, I'll be here to drive you wherever you want to go. Thank you, guys.
Dawn's a minute.
Hi, I'm Mark Sweetum. I've hung around with a bunch of these people over on this side of the room and one or two over here for a while now in poetry, and from Westbrook and Portland and the area and stuff. I brought my own refreshments in case I start to croak like last month, so. I'm just going to do one poem. It's not a Christmas poem, but I like to think that it ends on a positive note. Trust, the fourth and final emotion of freedom. In the void, a pact was made with invisible light, and stirring with water and dust of the earth, what we know as color was first given birth. If I could read the morning like a painter, seeing her world being formed in the void between brush and canvas, I too would hatch with abandon over the flat wash of modernity, mocking reality with megabytes, and scumble the base of industrial uniformity with textures of a wind-tossed marsh, and high tides of color would swell and slough off the cynicism of inevitability. I would wait where the river walks through the places we know to discover how she paints impasto, water and wind mimicking the medley of each moment in the other, as if the river were a womb conceiving, and the cirrus and cumulus and bowers above were merely sisters and brothers breaching before their mono-amniotic twins in utero below. I would dwell in Middle Earth, where the sky is falling between us and the solar flare, buffering the bruising rays to an orange, purple, and gray epidermis, filtering the void to a faraway blue, ciliated with shrubberies and mountains' majesties, and storm layers sifting down, sustain a tenuous, subcutaneous quick, clinging to a basalt lamina beneath. And with the last light of the evening of every La Luna Nueva, I would stand on the shore and learn prayers and a rosary of confessions to a grandchild, and omens for Ozymandias from the high tide of a new moon washing my feet. Cold waters from beneath a setting sun, lush with the remains of innumerable creatures, each one encapsulating incandescent aliens from the shores of that distant flaming globe, eternal entities intent on inhabiting this world. Spirits become flesh, their vitality vitiated by every variety whose volume makes the sea voluptuous and teeming. Touching my toes, they tarry in that moment of stillness between the last tender caress of a mighty wave and its falling back into the depths. Having welled up in the deep, driven by the wind from beyond horizons, becoming smooth, shallow, a nail on a fingertip, skimming silently up, expending the last, hanging motionless, weary, releasing tiny, infinitesimally tiny immigrants and receiving in return exhausted expatriates to rest on a circumnavigation of discovery and revive their spirits in the soporose sediments of the abyss. A voyage beyond the imagination of the crew of the Beagle and every Britannia boasting of ruling the waves, dissolving grain by grain the prayer, pressed like cuneiform into the tablet of sand beneath my feet. And every morning I would rise with the sun, stand and face the light, peering across the water as I search for the first long shadows of those who have lived the day now rising before me. I stretch out my arms and fingers to sift the sun for the silhouette of some patient soul who has stood on a distant, now evening shore, pledged and performed the duties of their day with kindness. I shut my eyes to the fierce coronas of the ambitious, and when they pass, I feel the shade of the quiet ones like a cool breeze through my fingertips, whispering the compassion of good deeds done without the risk of reward or recognition. So I lift my lids and find that the tears of the grateful, having traveled like some quantum hitchhiker on the penumbra of their benefactor, come pouring out of my eyes. And with these, I wash my hands of petty and narrow concerns. In this brief moment, with the sun always rising but narrowly peeking over the dawn, I turn towards evening, and radiance flows around me. And in my wake, a long shadow, a pledge to perform the duties of the day with kindness, in the hope that it too will bear tears of benevolence and find some other patient soul waiting in their mourning, and another and another and another, until we all wake and stand, arms reaching out to find the hills and shores of our meridian so crowded that our hands must clasp, and the tears washing over us become a torrent to drown the arrogance. If only I could read the morning like a painter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
This is what it would be like if this was the old days of coming and reciting something after the bard went. Going after Mark. Different holiday. New Year's Eve on the Williamsburg Bridge. BMT tracks lie silent. J-train down for repairs. Graffiti, the freshest paint on the bridge. Grizz and Bobby walk ahead, singing camp songs, while I try not to look down or retch over the edge. Up in the air, Junior Birdman. Grizz and Bobby are both half a foot taller than me, strong enough to play catch, using me as the ball. I feel too small to reach the light switch, too weak to flip it. Up in the air, upside down. In my mind, the J rattles out of Delancey. I leap from the walkway railing, ride a century back to Williamsburg. Mom tells me her parents joined that jabbering crowd, swarming like locusts out the Lower East Side when this Jews Bridge first opened. bundles, babies, side locks, swinging in the wind, 140 feet over East River. Up in the air, Junior Birdman. In my mind, the J isn't built yet. I'm jostling fellow Russians, Poles, Ukrainians to Williamsburg. I'm a believer. At the West Tower, the maintenance gate to a stairway is open. Just a step from the walkway railing to the stairway platform, and Grizz and Bobby are laughing up the 300-foot steel tower. Up in the air, upside down, just a step. But 140 feet above black water, I don't dare it. Night hides the bridge's neglect, like I would like the new year to hide my trail of steps not taken. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Dennis. I'm from West Paris. I've been hanging around with this side of the room quite a bit. What does hang around with this side? I'm going to read just two short poems. I often climb this mountain in Greenwood, Maine called Peaked Mountain. It's just a little unassuming mountain. And what's really weird is after I climb this mountain and I hang out on the peak, look around, as soon as I start descending the mountain, a poem just gets downloaded in me. It's really weird. I mean, if anybody wants to come hiking with me, there's this poetry portal atop this mountain. If you ever get writer's block, just give me a call. It's like clockwork. Anyway, I'm going to read two really short poems about Peaked Mountain, and I've got about 7 or 8, and I'm slowly putting together a file called the Peaked Mountain Poems, and they're inspired by, you know, the old Chinese poet style, very sparse, unadorned, completely opposite of what I normally do. It's like the Seinfeld episode. George does the complete opposite, and suddenly he's like this raging success. Having said that, these both got picked up this week by a magazine, so maybe I'm going to do the complete opposite of every sensible instinct I have. All right, this is called The Top Peaked Mountain. I've so come to admire the lichen colonizing the barren rock planets and making them fertile for moss, then blueberries inside crevices. That, in the last light, I gaze back and forth between the first stars and these galaxies in granite I've overlooked my whole life. This next one is also a summit poem. Peaked Mountain Low Bush Blueberry. One low bush blueberry in bloom when I reach the peak. So less time spent marveling at the sun slowly closing her eye. As I celebrate this sweet fruit seed, rooting in the duff blown into the crack of granite, after a bird filling up on blueberries below shat the seed perfectly into that half-inch footpath, where I too, for a brief time, bloomed, as I could not turn my gaze from this beauty burgeoning between boulders, even to look at the first stars ripening in the high bush field of the night sky. Thanks.
I've been hanging around a little with these guys. I'm all right. Some truth to that. My name's Jim Mello, and I am part-time a clergy person and part-time work in the therapy field. This is a seasonal poem, hopefully is going beyond what we usually think about. It's based on a video by the Piano Guys. of O Come, Emmanuel. And if I can recommend an instrumental 4 minutes of bliss, like being on the mountaintop, it would be that video. It's just great. It was the inspiration for the poem. O come, Emmanuel. The camera pans the ancient stone sand-covered steps of what could be the Holy Land. The pianist and the cellist center stage in the unidentified courtyard. The ancient wind blowing. The ancient wind blowing. Divining fingers poised on key and string touchstones, ready to coax the most human sounds from sympathetic instruments, to herald the melody of the bittersweet coming. Oh, that the triune one includes enough room in the inn of incarnation to allow ongoing breathings to bless the waiting, dark world. Through the frailties of mankind, through artistic empathies, through the stunning arrangement of this sacred hymn, mournful in its appreciation of our naked infant condition, which summons our magi souls to bring gifts to faraway mangers. In the next world, in my next life, the cello will be my instrument, to be held like a lover, to be embraced like an only child who could save a weary world, sensing only the whispering of eternity passing in only holy moons, producing strains so beautiful that even those unable to believe can taste the nectar of grace, the water of satisfaction through the bowed strings, like the oil these musicians balm our souls with. And the song of the God who comes to us, especially when we cannot come to him, when we are unable to hear the angel voices whispering salvation has been born into our hard time.
I know. I'm Alice. Oops. Jim's wife, and I've been hanging around this side of the room for about a year before COVID. And I'm going to stick to the overall theme of not sticking to a theme, to the theme. So, we're back to the shell of a summer house that bordered the pond where we saw the mergansers and buffleheads glide across the newly liberated waters, to see the abandoned wooden shoes again that you love and would nurture. You want them, fondle them, wrestle with the angel that says, take them home. They're slowly dying here. On the second floor, near the old upright piano, keys covered by shedding tar paper. In that glass face cabinet you've already restored in your ever-firing imagination. These shoes, which trigger iconic Holland, belong to you, I believe, rather than being left here to die of neglect. Like children in opiate-addled homes, like the marker stones in your secret cemeteries, like the newly blossoming tree buds along the interstate, ignored by children passing by, glazed by the ubiquitous screens of electronica. And I'm going to do one more. And this one is mine. I don't have this one memorized. It's called On the Ocean's Edge. Perched upon the tree that was drawn out to the ocean by the blazing sunlight, the same sun that allows the diamonds to dance atop the ocean waves. We sit, we stare, we dream of moments past and those yet to come. Tiptoeing along the rocky shore, leaping from rock to rock, attempting to stay above the mud-drenched flat, waves crashing, the voice of the gulls as they speak to one another, mating calls one could assume. Diving, splashing into the water to grasp a fish, back onto a nearby rock, fighting to keep its prize from the many other gulls, jealous of his speckled catch. The wind blowing, rustling, the tall grass that lines the inner shore. Healing, therapeutic to the inner depths of the soul. A visit to the ocean on any given day. Today, tomorrow, or even a visit from yesterday. Thank you.
I'm Carol-Lynn Russell, and Google Maps says that my house is 60 yards from here. I've been in it for about 45 years, but I grew up on Staten Island in New York City, and these two poems are about Christmas time in Staten Island. Christmas in Tottenville. The tree would arrive late and wait on the front porch till almost the last moment. It always was much taller than our 12-foot ceilings, so a top branch or two got lopped, which never helped aesthetically. We'd wedge this treasure into a corner. Bark and pines lose needles immediately. We disguise the gaps with paper links and chains of cranberries, padding them with itchy, splintered angel hair strands, and drowning them in silvery tinsel cascades and pointed colored lights with metal reflectors, enlarging their size to double, till one blew out and the whole tree went dark. On the top, an angel scraped the ceiling, its shabby elegance royal. Little glittered paper houses hung down, a bulb shining from each jewel-hued cellophaned portal, calling to the lionels circling round the floor. When dark fell, I'd kneel at my window and gaze towards the sparkling necklace of the outer bridge crossing connecting the island with New Jersey, hoping to spy Santa wend over it towards Tottenville, lured by its red and green lights over the dark kill. I'd wake to a doll and a book beneath the tree. Such Yuletide symmetry, each year the same beauty. After church, we'd drive to St. George for the ferry to Brooklyn to see Tante Tura, Dad's scary aunt who fed us Yulakaga, tea, and herring, and scolded Dad in dark Norwegian cadences, then sent us home with huge wheels of Swedish crisp bread. By this time, 79 Hopping overflowed with relatives paying court to Grandma. I hid from the conflicts until the golden dinner gong bid grown-ups to the living room, children to kitchen exile, wedged around a table by the basement door, hoping for the end of the celebration. Okay, a little bit more. Epiphany. Epiphany, 1983. We took the SIRT with old friends from St. Stephen's to the Manhattan-bound ferry to hear an organ concert at Trinity Church on Wall Street. It was rare for me to be in Tottenville on the birthday we shared, too close to Christmas for celebration or for gifts. Snow fell on Wall Street, the part of the city I held precious because of all the trips at dawn to the exchange, my little hand in Dad's big one as we strode the yet empty streets to 11 Wall and sneaked into the trading gallery for ticker tape which bore my name. The long table and the crimson velvet chairs of the Board of Governors were mine at dawn. The spiral stairs plummeting down in crazed, vertiginous grace to marbled floors seemed a glimpse of Carol's Rabbit Hole or a shot by Hitchcock. We owned it all, from the Battery up to St. Paul's Chapel at that hour, before humanity poured into the canyons. That January night, streets again were still as we huddled in the Gothic Revival Church where Mammon meets with Broadway. As the organ strains drifted over our heads, years melted off, and once again we reigned over the city corner we loved. flakes kissing our cheeks, we strolled in silent dark to South Ferry, sharing the magic and the memories with Dad's lifelong friends. When the ferry passed Governor's Island, 2 small, round cupcakes with candles emerged from a bag, and with great fanfare were lit. Whilst we sailed past Lady Liberty, 8 aged voices rang out in song, and soon the boat full of late-night commuters joined in to celebrate our anniversaries that Epiphany. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Calla Eris Orion. I work here at the library as the Adult Services Librarian. I am a transgender woman, and I love it. I'm so happy. This first one is called From the Manual for a Children's Toy. The head is hollow and can be used for storing things. This next one is, the title is from Voltaire's Candide. I have the impression that if he didn't complicate his life so needlessly, he would die of boredom. And it's an attempt to do the exact opposite. Not die of boredom, basically. Gasp about nothing. Gasp all your drawer full of tears into space, and let them lose friction and ounces in virtue. Gasp at the task that remains in your stead, the loss of your oval desires, and spirals of weirdness that seal off the remnants of what you'd had and turn to the coward of your being. Gasp from the loss of your body, the breath of your mind, the collapse that afflicts you with valleys of shape that adorn you, grasping for final delights that retreated as you reach for them, waiting around the one corner to spit on the fire, that lie, that vine, that trace in the corner behind. Gasp along doubtful, pungent with echoes of roles you once played in your head, the things you had wished for, the things you once said, turning aside like you'd asked for more lurking, kicked up in drastic, ephemeral spikes, passive, adrift in addiction to seizing, crying a reason and flitting past feverish beasts and latitudes drunkenly stated uneven. Gasp.
This is called Thank You. Thank you for the winter wind and the lake, its water like a stone, and for this quiet time to build words again, tucked into the foothills hard as iron, like flowers wait for spring, and for change, its core a small violence, inching soft inner bodies out of hard shells, our frozen winter grief, out where it can vanish and blow away, as if air and sun were its wings, and it a necessary and expected flight. One more. Thank you all for coming to this. This has been fun. And before I go into this one, if you haven't already donated, if you want to, it's a voluntary thing to donate to the library for them hosting us here. Just whatever you can or would like to, or not at all if you don't. And I think next month we'll have the second Saturday again. We'll have somebody else, and I'll put things out. Jay will put things out to tell you. So this is called Faith. Beside this baluster and granite block, bishops interned in this graveyard, ancient stones cleaned each year by the reverent hands of piety and tradition. Coffee in mine, the Kennebec River yawning its way under the bridge at dawn. Memories like foggy figures travel, their hands extended, and I turn away, my heart bled out too many times. The granite steps too high for old knees now. The entrance, not as wide as I once remembered. Depend not on your own understanding. And I am caught again between the moon falling and the sun rising at the same precise moment, that interchange where their goodness and their parked hearts stare at each other like strangers. One rises, one falls, until the night finally retreats and gives in to the morning birds sailing along the river in song. A joy that does not question, yet continues to know so much more than I.
I'm Pam Smith, and I'm from Brunswick. I have 2 poems.
Could you bring the mic closer to you? I can't
I
hear
could.
you. Would you please?
Okay.
Just pull it.
Pull it. Okay. Is that better? My voice goes down and the mic comes closer. Is that okay? Am I okay? I'm okay?
We can hear you.
You can hear? Oh, okay. That's the better question. All right. Lyle Lovett, love poem. His reedy, needy voice pulls my bashful heart. His music, strong as waves on a storm-loved beach. His jagged silk words curl like playful seals, this restless heart Texan man with this sly humor. How he struts, rolls, and embraces in hushed, measured voice. I am emboldened to turn up the volume and invent my own harmony, blend my voice with his, sketch in tide-worn sand the new song inside me. And somebody else did a foggy poem, so I'm going to end with a foggy poem. This is called Foggy Afternoon Walk. A large number of ducks were involved in a walking migration from the creek they inhabit on Richards Drive to the front yard of the gray house on the meadow. At least 100 of them, a congregation moving in smallish clumps, cacophonous and graceful, dared the misty road and sidled or trotted across. Every time a car appeared through the fog, arrangements were improvised. Negotiations varied with each encounter. Sometimes the car stopped and the ducks continued, silent, through wavering headlight beams. Other times, the ducks retreated to the shadows, squawking their disgust. In the end, a reckless car came, driving fast. It swerved toward 8 or 10 ducks, spotlighting their feathered, vulnerable majesty in the middle of the glistening road. I screamed from the sidewalk, covered my face with my arms, and the ducks flew away. I had forgotten they had wings.